Imagine being chased by a relentless, road-raging psychopath, all because of one small mistake on the highway. What would you do if a simple case of tailgating turned into a life-or-death game of cat and mouse? Welcome to the nightmare that is Tailgate, 2019, where one wrong move leads to pure terror. Buckle up, because this ride is about to get deadly. Hans, an impatient and arrogant family man, is traveling with his wife Diana and their two young daughters to visit his parents. From the beginning, it is clear that Hans has a short temper, especially when it comes to driving. He is aggressive behind the wheel, showing little patience for other motorists and often taking unnecessary risks to overtake slower vehicles. As they drive along the highway, Hans becomes frustrated when he gets stuck behind a white van moving at a moderate speed. Unable to contain his impatience, he begins tailgating aggressively, flashing his headlights, honking his horn, and weaving in an attempt to pressure the van's driver into moving aside. The van, however, does not speed up or yield to Hans's aggressive behavior. This only fuels his frustration further. When an opportunity finally arises, Hans overtakes the van in an erratic manner, nearly causing an accident in the process. As he passes, he throws an insulting hand gesture at the driver, a move that seems trivial in the moment but will soon prove to be a grave mistake. Diana watches closely, noting how the van seems to anticipate their movements, never straying too far but never overtly aggressive. The children, unaware of the growing tension, continue chatting in the back seat, while the atmosphere in the front becomes heavier with each passing minute. When they stop at a gas station, Hans, still unconcerned, barely acknowledges him at first. But Diana feels the weight of his presence immediately. There is no anger in his posture, no rush in his steps, just an unsettling calmness. Ed approaches Hans and begins speaking. His tone is eerily polite, yet there is something unnerving about his words, as if they are carefully chosen to mask something far more dangerous. He explains why he is there, addressing Hans's reckless driving and the risks he had taken on the road. He does not raise his voice or show any outward aggression, but the intensity in his demeanor suggests he is not someone who easily lets things go. He insists on receiving an apology. His presence alone demands acknowledgement, but Hans refuses. Diana remains tense, sensing that this is not a simple encounter that will be forgotten. The moment lingers uncomfortably, but Hans shrugs it off, acting as if nothing significant has happened. As they drive away, Diana watches the rearview mirror, her unease growing. The van does not move immediately, but remains parked for a moment, as if considering its next move. Then, slowly, it pulls back onto the road, resuming its quiet, relentless pursuit. The situation has shifted. This is no longer a simple warning. Ed has made his decision, and Hans is about to learn just how far he is willing to go. Ed calmly begins to follow Hans and his family, his presence gradually becoming more unsettling. At first, Hans dismisses it as a coincidence, assuming the van is simply heading in the same direction. He remains confident, unwilling to entertain the idea that anything is wrong. Desperate for safety, Hans pulls into a restaurant parking lot, hoping that being in a public place will deter Ed from continuing his pursuit. Inside, the family tries to compose themselves, but the panic is evident in their faces. Unlike Hans, Ed does not appear flustered or rushed. He moves with unsettling confidence, scanning the room before calmly taking a seat nearby. Yet his presence alone is suffocating. Hans, fueled by growing fear and frustration, attempts to confront him, raising his voice and demanding that he leave them alone. But Ed remains eerily composed, his expression unchanged. His response is measured, deliberate. He repeats his demand for an apology, as if the entire nightmarish chase could be resolved with a simple act of humility. Realizing they are not safe, Hans and Diana quickly gather their children and rush outside, hoping to escape before Ed can react. But when they reach their car, their fear turns to dread. Something is wrong. The vehicle won't start. Unbeknownst to them, Ed had subtly sabotaged it, ensuring they couldn't simply drive away from their nightmare. Hans frantically tries to get the car running while Diana looks around in panic. Hans drives erratically, pushing his car to the limit in a desperate attempt to escape Ed. His hands grip the wheel tightly, his breathing heavy with fear. His wife, Diana, pleads with him to slow down, but Hans refuses to listen, convinced that outrunning Ed is the only way to survive. The children cry in the back seat, terrified by the chaos unfolding around them. Ed, however, remains calm and in control. He doesn't need to rush. He knows how this will end. He follows with calculated precision, waiting for Hans to make a mistake. The road narrows, and Hans, blinded by his arrogance and fear, misjudges a turn. The family eventually arrives at Hans's parents' house, believing they have finally escaped Ed's relentless pursuit. Exhausted and shaken, they attempt to settle in, with Hans trying to downplay the events of the day. However, the tension remains thick, and Diana remains on edge, sensing that their ordeal is not yet over. The house grows eerily quiet, but an unsettling presence lingers just outside. Unbeknownst to them, Ed has been patiently waiting, watching from the shadows. He methodically disables any means of escape, cutting off power and blocking the driveway. Then, under the cover of darkness, he makes his move. Breaking into the house with calculated precision, he moves silently through the halls, his exterminator's mask hiding any emotion. Lying helpless on the cold ground, Hans stares up at Ed, his arrogance now replaced with pure terror. Ed, remaining eerily calm, prepares his extermination tools, treating Hans as just another pest to be eradicated. He methodically sprays a thick, suffocating layer of toxic chemicals over Hans, coating his face and body. Hans gasps for air, his skin burning as the poison seeps in. He writhes in agony, choking as his body weakens. Inside the house, Diana and Hans's parents hear the commotion outside, but before they can react, Hans makes a desperate move. Instead of running through the front door, he frantically escapes Ed's grasp and sprints toward the side of the house. Fueled by pure survival instinct, he begins climbing, grasping onto ledges, pipes, and anything he can find to hoist himself up. Ed watches from below, unfazed, as Hans struggles his way to the upper floor. Hands slipping, breath ragged, Hans finally reaches a window and forces it open, tumbling inside, gasping for air. Without hesitation, Hans rushes to the bathroom, turns on the shower at full blast, and throws himself under the water. The chemicals wash away, but his body trembles from the shock of it all. Diana and his parents look on in horror, realizing just how close he came to death. As the nightmare comes to an end, Hans, still shaken by the ordeal, gathers himself. The next morning, he stands outside the house, saying goodbye to Diana. There are no grand gestures or dramatic words, just a quiet understanding between them, shaped by the terror they endured. With his children by his side, Hans walks away, attempting to return to normalcy, though the weight of what happened lingers. He doesn't look back, unaware of the silent presence behind him. Unbeknownst to Hans, a familiar presence lingers behind him. Ed's white van slowly rolls forward, keeping a measured distance, its engine humming softly. He doesn't honk, doesn't speed up, just follows, patient and methodical, like a predator stalking its prey. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.